It's a real honor to be in Erie tonight. And I've told some of you that I actually travel Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays almost every week, going into communities and cities and states. And I know that I'm standing here at a Jefferson Global Society Summit, but I must tell you, I'm a Dwight Eisenhower woman because I have had a fellowship from the Eisenhower Fellowship, and it was a gift given to him for his birthday when all of his friends asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, "I wanted to set up a fellowship so that Americans could go abroad and live." And so I lived in Eastern Europe, in Hungary, Austria, and Prague, which is where I got my global perspective, right? And so where I learned and brought it back to America. And so I'm standing up here not only with that background, but I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. I actually didn't know as a little girl that my DNA was being genetically engineered, right? So my mother was a social and economic justice person, but I didn't know it. And I knew that people would come to my house and sit in my living room and would discuss topics with my mother, but I didn't really understand it. And my father was an entrepreneur, but he wasn't called an entrepreneur. He died and didn't know he was an entrepreneur. He was just called a person who couldn't get a job, but he had his own business, right? And so when I put those two together, that's who I am today. I'm genetically engineered by my parents, right? And the other part that makes up me is my religious platform because I'm standing here understanding that this is my assignment in life. This is what I'm supposed to do, right? Is be that intermediary and connector for the have-nots and get the haves to understand. And that's really my discussion and my presentation and my talk tonight, right? And so I've only ever had one job, and I took that job to perfect my skill. And I stayed there, and the day I felt that I had enough, that I'd made myself a sponge, I walked in to the president's office and said, "I'm resigning." And he said, "You need to go see a psychiatrist." And, and I said, "No." I said, "I'm ready. I'm ready to go out on my own." And I have not worked for anyone for almost 40 years. And the reason I tell that story is because far too often in low wealth communities, we teach young people to get education and go get a job. And I have nothing wrong with a job. But we also recognize there are some people that don't fit the job culture, but they don't have alternatives and we don't discuss them. And so I really want to open up the door here that we begin to understand small businesses should be the fabric of Erie. They should be woven in every strategy, every approach. I've heard a lot about Erie as being revitalized. Okay, but when Raven took me and we were driving around, I didn't see minorities part of that revitalization. And Erie, that's a problem, right? And so what I'm going to share with you is a presentation about how we have integrated minorities into our operation, right? So the other background I want to tell you is that I'm not the founder of the Enterprise Center. I joined the organization about 18 months after it was started. It actually was founded by the University of Pennsylvania. And so when someone told me that this organization had my name written on it, I said, "Oh no, I don't work for nonprofits. I'm a for-profit woman." And so I met with the leadership of University of Pennsylvania and I said, "Tell me about this nonprofit." And they told me about it and I said, "Well, we got one little problem. I'm not going to work for you." So they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, how much money is in the bank?" They said $2,000. They said, "But it's got a grant coming for $31,000. I said, "And what else does it have?" They said, "Not much else. It's got we rent in a small office in West Philadelphia." And I said, "Okay, I'll take it." They said, "You'll take it?" I said, "Yep, but one caveat, I don't want a job from you. I'll take it and I'll grow it." And so that's 31 years later. I have 45 people, budget of about $15 million, and we're growing, right? And so they wanted to have an organization, and back 31 years ago, people couldn't spell entrepreneurship. They didn't know what it meant, right? And so it's ironically that Raven's last name is Clark. My last name is Clark. And the guy who started in this old television station was named Dick Clark. So I told the president that I went around and told a tale. I told folks that he was my first husband and that it was before integration. And that when we divorced, I ended up with the building. And that I needed to raise money to restore it because the building was boarded up, had graffiti all on it, and was in terrible shape. And this is on the National Historic Register, had a historic marker, and it was boarded up, right? And so I took the picture around, and I am pleased to tell you that we purchased the building and we renovated it and we opened up our doors in 1997 without a dollar in debt. Now, why is that important? It was important because when I took the picture around and told people what I wanted to do from a vision standpoint, I told them that the organization could not be financially induced by the pressure of its debt to the point it could not fulfill its vision of what it wanted to do with integrating minorities into the equitable economy. And so people took that, and so that's why we were able to open up our door. So every building, we now have a $30 million real estate portfolio, and every single building was built by minority entrepreneurs. The American Bandstand building was built by minorities. It was renovated by them. The other 7 buildings we have, all were done by minorities. And we just recently completed a brand new ground up building that was 100% minorities from architect, engineer, down to the construction. Now, was that easy? No. But should we do it? Absolutely. And so as you think about how you renovate and revitalize Erie, if you do not integrate this side of town here, which is the have-nots, into the revitalization over here, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So you really need to think about it. So I'm going to walk you through some of the work that we've been doing. Now, my role has changed at the organization. I'm now actually a fund manager. I do not run the enterprise center on a day-to-day. I've actually hired a person who is working and really leading this organization. It still got my DNA, my fingerprint on it, but I'm now fund manager. I'm going to address access to capital, right? And I've become a capital revolutionary, and I'm a disruptor in this system. I'm gonna crack the safe to the capital markets. I learned that capital flows where it knows, so I'm gonna get the capital, right? And I do not work just in Philadelphia. I'm working across America with a lot of different cities. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about us. Um, we primarily work in 3 areas. We work on acceleration, capital investments, and community revitalization, right? So we have to bring capital in all 3 of those. One thing that we've done is that we've changed our lingo. When you work with the have-nots, the word technical assistance is used a lot. But if you go over here to capital markets and talk to CEOs, they don't even know what technical assistance means. We are pretty much wiping that word out of our vocabulary, and we call it expertise and management consulting. And that's why you see business acceleration. We're focused on how do we help a CEO, founder from a low wealth family, from a low wealth community, how do we help you get there further faster with the resources we could bring to the table? So I don't know if you know the lady in the middle. Her name is Isabella Goodsman. She is the head of the SBA administrator. That's what her position is called. She has a cabinet position and she reports to Biden. She comes to the Enterprise Center quite a bit. Almost every time she comes to the Enterprise Center, come to Philadelphia, she comes to the Enterprise Center. One, because she sees us as a lab. We are the first nonprofit in America that applied for a private equity license and received it and is the GP of a for-profit fund. That is the first time. So you can disrupt the structure. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been, right? I didn't come from Bain Capital. I didn't come from Wall Street. I came from the hood of West Philadelphia that went to Washington and said, this is the model that we want to deploy capital to low wealth CEOs and founders, and we were able to get it. And Isabella helped us to achieve that goal. And so I'm very, very excited about that. So we have 5 entities, 3 nonprofits, and 2 for-profit. We own our own construction firm because we wanted to make sure that minorities are intentionally participated in construction. Construction happens to be the largest industry cluster that minorities participate in. The second one, ironically, is food. We didn't do a food incubator just to do a food incubator. We recognized that food was a industry cluster, and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and here in Philadelphia, you cannot produce food out of your home and then sell it to the public. So I wanted you to see how we are structured. So where I am spending probably 80% of my time is in Innovate Capital Growth Fund. That is a for-profit equity fund. It is not deploying debt. It is only equity. Now, why is that important? Because most minorities, assets are low and liabilities are high. And they need equity on that balance sheet, and the EBITDA is negative. And so we're putting equity in to build that balance sheet to have enterprise value so that they can stop depending on us and get capital from other people. I'm a Texan, if you pick up my accent. How I ended up in Philadelphia is that I married a Philadelphian. And he's an Eagle fan, and I'm a Cowboy fan. And we're playing each other on Sunday. So have your TVs on because if you see my husband and I fighting in the game, you'll know what happened, right? And I absolutely love what I do. Absolutely. You know, this is my assignment in life, and I cannot think of doing anything else but helping other minorities succeed. So here's pretty much how we have grown. Um, it was difficult in my early days starting out with $2,000. I went 4 years in this organization without generating much revenue. And I was talking to Mary tonight and giving her all my secrets in fundraising. But the first 4 years was hard, Mary. Some of the secrets I shared with her, I learned them through hard knocks. It was really hard, right? Because I came out of the for-profit world where corporations provide the resources. You don't have to go out and raise them. So when I joined the Enterprise Center, I had to go out here and transfer those skills to fundraising. So I cried a lot my first 4 years. I don't cry anymore because I know how to get the money, right? I know how to get it. I know how to go out here and get it now. So these numbers here do not represent the Enterprise Center's revenue. That represents aggregately how we help our clients. Now, how do we do that? So I go to the private sector, the public sector, the universities, and I talk to them about their procurement strategies because they are your largest economic drivers in your region, right? Erie Insurance Company, if you're the largest Fortune 500 company here, you got power in your procurement, right? President, you got power in your procurement. So that number represents us, the Enterprise Center, knocking on doors to get contracts for our clients, and then we bring the capital to make sure that they fulfill those obligations and they make money. Because we're not a social service organization. We are a wealth creation organization. I've created millionaires and multimillionaires, and I haven't created a billionaire. And I hope the next time I come back to Erie, I've created a billionaire because that's the goal, right? And so Philadelphia is branded as one of the poorest cities in America. And so I'm working with the leadership in Philadelphia to try to change that branding to make it equitable and that we reduce the poverty in our city. So we keep our clients in 3 buckets. We have, it says early stage, but we call them first graders internally. Um, Growing, we call them 6th graders. And scaling, we call them 12th graders. So when you come in, we assess you. Should you be in the first grade class, the 6th grade class, or the 12th grade class? Now, we don't say that to them externally. We say early, growing, scaling, but internally we call them first graders. Now, if you look at the characteristics of a first grader, they learning to read and write, they learning the alphabets. Well, that's what first grade is doing. They learning the balance sheet, they learning how to do projections, they're learning. That represents, first graders represent about 20% of our portfolio, right? That we help to grow. They do not get our equity money, they get our seed investment money, We put seed investment. So we have a seed investment fund because in early stage, you really can't afford debt because you don't have much revenue. So what we do is we raise seed investment money. Average size seed investment is about $250,000. Because if you come from a family where your parents didn't own the boots, didn't own the straps, you cannot bootstrap because they don't have any resources. So that's why putting seed investments in there, we usually take a convertible note. We hold small amounts of equity in a whole host of different firms. We don't do this without taking some ownership, right? Why do we take ownership in them? One is psychological. Two, we know that if we get a hit, we want to benefit from it. So we take equity in these firms, usually non-controlling, but we do take a small percentage of ownership in them. So we have that in almost every stage that we work in. We take equity. We also package our businesses. So when we go make cold calls to companies, universities, we actually make what we call a deal book. And we do it electronically. So if it's food, we have all food clients. If it's construction, we have all construction businesses. If it's technology, we have all. We do not group industry clusters. We do not group early, growing, or scaling. We will not put a first grader in the same room with a 12th grader. We don't do it. Oftentimes cities do what we call cattle calls. They produce a flyer, they produce something, and everybody can come. But it can be ineffective. Because if I'm sitting there and I'm a growing company, I don't want to be sitting in there with a first grader raising their hand, I need a loan, how do I get one? That's just not right. So we group by size, scale, and by industry cluster, and we do not mix them at all. The only time we will mix them is when we have a expert, and we might curate the audience and pick them out for that particular speaker, but we do not group it. We're very, very intentional. And that's the point that I want Erie and all of you to understand. You have to be intentional. You have to curate everything. You have to curate your consultants, curate your clients. You cannot mix people together, right? We make sure we're very, so that when entrepreneurs leave anything we put together, they say that had a lot of value for me. I really benefited from that. I learned from that. If they don't, they won't come back. They will not come back. And so that has worked very, very well for us. I want to talk a little bit about the community. Our community is really in trouble in Philadelphia. We got high crime, we got poverty, we got not enough capital. And so this is really tough work. And so I spend, and my staff, I have 45 full-time people. We spend our time, we all the street team people, we on the street pushing minority businesses because there's a lot of trickery in this business, right? The city will put out an RFP or RFI. They already know who they want to select. And the people who sit around the table that make the final decision is not thinking about a framework of an equitable society or providing a minority an opportunity. We have to sometimes force that. We have to protest sometime and say, that RFP needs to be put back out on the street because it's not fair. So you have to look at, your city should be the leader. Your city should drive the leadership to bring about the change you want to see because they also have considerable amount of purchasing power. And so we really, I call on the city. Everybody in the city know me, right? Because when an opportunity hits the street, we want to make sure that minorities apply. We don't want to hear, well, we couldn't find one. No one applied. We didn't know. We hear that too much, and that's not acceptable for us. So we do a lot. So we are well respected by the community, right? Because we provide capital, we make connections, and they can see the difference in the community of what we're doing. So one of the projects that I came up with ideas, I don't actually have time to take a lot of vacation and do a lot of travel, but I spend the weekends on the internet going to other countries. And so this particular weekend during COVID, I went to India online. And I saw that India business people buy a van or a vehicle and they customize it for their office on wheels. They don't rent office space. So I just came up with the idea of, taking a 8-passenger vehicle and gutted it out and made it to a office on wheels so that my staff could go out into these low wealth communities, take this vehicle, and we can make loans. Because if you're a bakery and you are, it's a family business, you can't afford to close up to come to us to talk about a loan. We need to go to you, but it's inefficient for us to send one person. We need to go do the whole corridor. So it's called Biz on Wheels, right? And I looked around on the internet. I found a 2019 Ford. It had 200,000 miles on it in North Carolina. I purchased it and I said, well, I might as well find a company near there that could redesign it. And I found one in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? It was $150,000 to customize it. And I got the money from Comcast, Wells Fargo, and a biotech firm called Sparks, right? This has been innovation for us. We can take it into rural communities in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We take it to festivals. We take it to street things. It has been so successful. We can make loans off this vehicle. We have TV. We got security. We can have happy hour from this vehicle. We got a wine bar, right? We do everything off of it. It has set us apart. Now, one other thing that you will notice about this vehicle, if you came in and saw it, it doesn't have the Enterprise Center name on it because anyone in Philadelphia can use this vehicle. They just have to take our driver because our insurance, we can't have it. But this does not have our name on this. We made this a gift to the city of Philadelphia. Just call us, whatever you have in, we'll bring the vehicle. You can have your staff work it with your clients because that was important for us, right? And where did we get the money from? Beside these three sponsors. So during COVID, we decided we were going to participate in PPP. We did 20,942 applications, totaling $477 million. It broke our back. We worked day and night from home to help. The smallest PPP that we did for a minority business was $346,000. The largest PPP we did was 1.9 million. It was tough work. So we have reduced all that down now to $20 million is what we have left on our books. We still have $40 million of loans on the streets of Philadelphia. And I will tell you, all 40 million of those dollars is at risk. Now, why are they at risk? Low assets, high liabilities. So if we took any collateralization for any one of those loans and the client can't pay us back, there's no assets for us to get that. But we know that we wouldn't have done the revenue numbers and we wouldn't have the jobs if we didn't take that risk. So part of this is about what are you willing to take in risk? Because to move that needle is going to require a great deal of risk, right? Now, where did that $40 million come from? It came from banks. So we go to banks and we get banks to loan us the money at 2%. And then we reloan it out to clients at a competitive rate, right? And then we keep the spread. And that's how we pay the staff that makes the loans. So I want to talk about 52nd Street. This was a boarded up, dilapidated corridor that for 25 years I said we're not going there. It's an incubator of criminal activity. It's in really bad shape. Now, if you meet anyone from Philadelphia, they will tell you how it was one of the most thriving corridors in Philadelphia early on. But when it was thriving, it was controlled by the Jewish merchants. And they lived above their store. And they would go out every day and clean the sidewalks. They took care of the building. They took care of the neighborhood. They hired people from the community. But they sold their businesses to Asians. And Asians don't live on that corridor. They live in our suburbs. They live in northern Delaware. And the corridor's gone down, has not had any investment capital. So people started coming to me and knocking on my door and said, you got to do it. I said, no, 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 we're not touching 52nd Street. Well, I guess I don't listen. We have taken ownership of 52nd Street. And so first thing we did was we brought in a team. We took one of our entrepreneurs, a young lady who has a janitorial business, and we are cleaning this corridor 6 days a week. We're moving trash, graffiti. And so if you go to this corridor and ask clean, we bought this building, right? And so I told the story earlier that it took me 3 years, but I brought Jamie Dimon to 52nd Street. You know who Jamie Dimon is? Who is Jamie Dimon? Huh? Chase Bank. He's the chairman of Chase Bank. Took me 3 years. I brought Jamie Dimon to 52nd Street. And I brought his staff and I said, we want to put a branch on 52nd Street. That day, that morning before he came, we got out there, removed all the trash and everything. And there's a branch across from this building on 52nd Street from Chase Bank. So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to buy up everything around Chase Bank because we know it's going to appreciate the value, right? So we bought that building. It's 24,000 square feet. It was a retail, one of those cheap discount retailers. We purchased it because we want to get rid of them, right? We don't want cheap merchandising on this card anymore because that's all what exists. Everything is imported in from China, right? We also took an asset, what's in this community, what's not. There is not one single restaurant to sit down. You can buy a bag of chips, you can buy chicken wings. There's nothing on this card to eat with a knife, fork, and spoon and a napkin, a cloth napkin. Everything is pick-up food. McDonald's, you don't need a knife, fork, and spoon if you unless you're gonna get a salad, right? So what we bought this building and we're gonna make this into a food hub, but good, healthy food, right? So I had an entrepreneur in Atlanta, Georgia, that used to have a restaurant in Philadelphia. I dug her up in Atlanta and said, you got to come to Philadelphia. So she's helping us with this project. We're going to make this into a spotlight for healthy food, and we're going to make it a sit-down restaurant. We're going to open up the windows. We're going to open it up, and it's going to be done with 100% of minority contractors. And everybody in here is going to be a minority vendor, right? Now, when I use the word minority, I'm not talking about just people of color like me. I'm speaking if you Asian, if you Indian, long as you or need help, that's what we call a minority, right? Our organization does not turn away anyone that needs help, but you gotta be willing to receive our help. So 52nd Street is probably going to take, to turn it around, about $250 million, right? So what I'm doing now is that I'm bringing through, I have not taken Josh Shapiro through it, but I've taken his cabinet members through it, right? So we're working on multimodal, we're working on sidewalks, we're working on streets, we're working with entrepreneurs to revitalize it. So it's kind of the same work you're doing here in Erie. I think the difference is that we're very, very intentional about minority participation on this corridor. Because when George Floyd, when we had the uprising, one of the cultural intelligence that we learned from this corridor is that every minority business on this corridor, it was an X, they was not touched. Everybody else, they destroyed them. So we know that if minorities build it, minorities are part of the economic fabric of the work you're doing, they will protect your asset. That is one of my best takeaways that I could tell you. They will protect the asset if they are part of the equation. So one of the things we did in that building last year after we bought it is that we opened up the door and said, if you're a retailer and you are internet based, you can come in here for the holidays and bring your goods, and we're gonna give you 90% of the profit that is generated. And we open up our doors, didn't cost him a dime, right? We don't know whether we're gonna do it this year or not because we're working on the space to start renovation on it. But the entrepreneurs are calling us up. Are you gonna do this? So we're trying to find another building that we can put them in. So this was called a Black Holiday Pop-Up. It was only open up from Halloween till January 15th. But I would tell you, it was one of the other best ideas that we had. So if you took an old building here and just open up the door and say, if you sell product and good, whether it's hair care products, you make clothes, you make candles, whatever you make. We even had kids who had products. They were in there. We had them selling their products, right? And so it really does work. You have to think about, we gave them all a table, they bring their product, we had art, we had everything in there. And we got a lot of press from that story of having a black pop-up on 52nd Street. So we started our own construction firm to make sure we also remain intentional. So this building you see in the middle there, that brown building, that was a building built from the ground up. It was a boarded up building. We purchased it, bought it from the owner, and again, 100% minority participation did that. Now, who funded that project? Jamie Dimon didn't fund this one. I went to Wells Fargo, right? So the day that the vice chairman of Wells Fargo came to visit 52nd Street, I did not pick up the trash. I left the trash there, right? And I knew that he was gonna come in a black, big SUV, and I knew he was gonna have on some shiny new shoes. And I wanted him, when he stepped out of the SUV, I wanted him to step on trash. And I had trash put where I thought he was going to step. And we got 2.5 million from him. And that building there has zero debt as a result of that vice chairman from Wells Fargo, right? And they liked so well what we did, they gave us additional $1 million to start working on signage on 52nd Street. So I'm telling you these stories for a reason, right? One, you got to figure out who in this room is the professional beggar. Who's going to be the disruptor for Erie? And then all of you need to rally around. I'm that person in Philadelphia, right? I'm the disruptor, I'm the professional beggar. Every CEO, every mayor, everybody supports me, and they support the organization because they understand the mission. And I'm not here to pick and select which organization it is or which individual, but you guys need to come together and figure out who that is, okay? All right, who's going to be the connector between the have-nots and the have, and between the private sector, the public sector, the university, that economic power out there? So I spend the majority of my time doing that. And that's why my staff frees me up to be able to do that so I can be the professional beggar and the connector, right? So, I pick pockets. That's what I do every day, all day long. And before I leave here, I'm gonna pick somebody's pocket tonight. President, I'm sorry. I'm gonna pick somebody's pocket tonight, right? So we talked about food, right? So Dodo Hamilton was heir to Campbell Soup, which was headquartered in New Jersey. So I did research and say, who in this town love culinary art? Who loves food? And I found out Dorrance Hamilton, Dodo Hamilton. Now she's a wealthy woman. The first time she came to see me, she had a chauffeur driver. I was like, oh, wow, right? And so I showed her this, it was a supermarket, but it was a small supermarket when supermarkets were only 14, 15,000. As you know now, supermarkets are 100,000 square feet. This was a small supermarket. It was boarded up. It was dilapidated. So a car pulls up, and I said, Miss Hamilton, I'd like for you to buy this building, right? She's like, what? I'm like, I'd like for you to buy this building. Now, how I did this, there is something called a non-financial lien. You know what that means? Non-financial lien? What that means is you get somebody to buy the building, right? They put a lien on the building, but you don't pay no mortgage, right? Because I wanted Miss Hamilton to understand, we wasn't trying to buy the building and fix it up and sell it. We weren't looking for personal gain. We want to revitalize, but we need the asset purchase with no debt so that we could go out and raise the money. So Miss Hamilton did. So what we did was we structured a deal with her that 1.1 million would amortize down. And as long as we kept our mission of food entrepreneurship out of this building, every year that would go down. And over a 10-year period, it would go down. So I stand here to tell you now that debt is free. Okay? Use the non-financial lien. Find somebody with resources that can buy the building, have them put a lien on it, because you need site control to raise the money, because you can't raise site control for for a building you don't have. So I use this all the time. This is how we're able to. So now we have a $30 million real estate portfolio using non-financial liens, right? So she purchased the building. We went out there, we took a picture of this building, boarded up again. I couldn't use the Dick Clark story, but I used the Dodo Hamilton story. And we got federal dollars, state dollars, public sector dollars, private sector. But the key is that I went to all the universities that are close by this building in West Philadelphia, which was University of Pennsylvania, St. Joe's, Drexel, and Children's Hospital and University of Pennsylvania Hospital. And we said, who's your food service contracts with? It was Aramark, Bon Appetit, and Sodexo. We said, what product category are you willing to outsource to the local economy? They said baked goods. So we said, okay, this is going to be a big part of our commercial kitchen. And we did this before we started construction. It's going to be baked goods. So the majority of baked goods at those universities and those entities is from this kitchen. We bought a truck. We get the orders. We sub them to the food entrepreneurs that work out of there. We make the deliveries. When we get paid, the entrepreneurs get paid. Before COVID, we were doing close to $1 million a year. Right now, since COVID, we've gotten it up to about 600,000. We're just trying to work our way back to $1 million a year. Now, that $1 million a year is based on $40 an hour, minimum of 2 hours to use the kitchen, and it's open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, right? So we connect our entrepreneurs to Whole Foods, to to small cafes, to help them sell their product. Yesterday, and we have what we call food tastings, where we set up food tasting, and then we bring these institution buyers and Aramark, Sodexo to come in and try a new client so we can help get them business, right? So we're trying to be very, very intentional. This was a $6 million project because building a kitchen is very expensive. Does Erie have a food incubator? Do you have food entrepreneurs in the city? Then you might need to find a building where you can get somebody to buy it on a non-financial lien and go out and raise the money because food entrepreneurs, it is recession proof. People buy food, and if you got kids on university, they gonna eat a chocolate chip cookie, oatmeal cookie almost every day. So we make tons of cookies out of here, brownies out of here, vegan that gets taken over to the university, and we deliver, right? So we have a refrigerated truck. We want to meet all the standards. We build, our clients don't have to worry about that. So it's a model that really, really works. So what we did after that is that we found an economic remnant that our SEPTA, which is our transportation owned. So we went to them and said, we'll give you $1 a year for 30 years. And I might need to borrow that $30 because we haven't paid our lease $1 a year. But we took their land and we raised $500,000 from Toyota Foundation. And why do we go to Toyota Foundation? Because in that neighborhood is a Toyota dealership. And if you don't know this, every Toyota dealership that makes a donation to a community group, the Toyota Foundation will match it. Did you know that? That's where that $500,000 came from. And because we were making so many requests to the Toyota Foundation, the CEO came. And he brought his wife because he wanted to see this farm. So we made it into a farm in a pocket park, right? So we grow things on that farm and we sell it back to the community. We have a Thanksgiving, we'll give away about 400 turkeys from this farm. We give away Christmas things. We do a lot. And there is an elementary school 2 blocks away from this farm called Allen Locke. We met with the kids and said, what do you want to do? Kids said, we want to grow chickens. So they needed a chicken coop. I went and found a chicken coop and had the chicken coop with air conditioning, electric, okay? The kids are so fascinated because they're growing chickens now at an elementary school. So then we decided to go back and meet with the kids, and now we have them working on the farm. Now, we're teaching them STEM, science, math, by working on this farm. It's a small pocket farm. This is not big at all, right? But it's the strategy and the approach that we're using. So we've created a whole ecosystem here around food, right? It's one of our largest industry clusters beside construction, right? We are intentional about food in Philadelphia. President, I will tell you this, every time there's a trustee meeting and they have a breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the desserts come from our kitchen, okay? It comes from our kitchen, and that's important for us, all right? And it's important for the university because they didn't have to go source, they didn't have to go find. We did all of that, and we bring it, right? So really, the model really works. So this is one of our success stories. This young lady makes a French toast, but she makes it so that you dip the syrup in a cup. And she was a phenomenon for us. People really loved her French strips. And so then we connected her to a brewery. And the brewery decided to make a French toast ale and partner with her, right? Our port is trying to build up our port, where our water, because we sit on the water too. And so we got her one of the kiosks on the port to help her. And now she's getting into growing and want to have her own farm. So now she wants to be part of the ecosystem for food. So she's a single mother, got 2 kids, and this is the model that we want to create here. And we're getting her to the path of wealth, not the path of social programs. So why is capital so critical? It is the number one disruptor. There are 18 pain points associated with the lack of capital. You make bad decisions. You can't hire people. You can't build your infrastructure you need to be successful. Because I heard too much, well, they don't have the capacity to do this size contract, right? So that's when I decided I need to become a capital revolutionary. So I stand here today, that's what I'm focused on, is bridging the capital gap. And this fund that I mentioned, where we were the first nonprofit as a GP, we now have 65 LP investors in this fund and still growing, right? Because it's the commitment to minority entrepreneurship, right? And we now have a due diligence pool of money, right, that we use. So we're now trying to get our businesses to build their assets, but they don't have money to go out and negotiate with an owner, get an appraisal, get the environmental done before they go to a bank. And once you go to the bank won't use that appraisal. They have to get their own appraisal. So you could be out of $15,000 before you go to the bank to talk about getting a mortgage. Well, we cover that cost. And then when you go to closing, we let you have that money for 1%. You don't pay us anything till you go to closing. And when you go to closing, you pay us back at closing our money back so we can recycle it back to somebody else who want to. So we are now in the asset building business, right? We want the assets high and we want the liabilities low. And we recognize we got to do two things: increase the equity in that business and increase the assets to improve the enterprise value of that business. So that's why capital is so important. So I freed myself up from the Enterprise Center to now focus on this. And so this is the most difficult and challenging part of my work that I've ever taken on. Because for 27 years, after my first 4 years, before I learned how to fundraise, for the next 20 years or so, I very seldom got the word no, right? But now I'm getting the word no on the fund. But I done figured it out. What I do now is tell people I'll shatter their kneecap if they don't invest. That's how I got the 65 people. But joking aside, I painted the vision about how we reduce poverty, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but in America, because that 65 investors didn't come all from Philadelphia. TD Bank is my last investor. I flew to Toronto, took me 3 years with TD Bank, and I got $5 million from TD Bank in Toronto, right? I've gotten tons of dollars from JP Morgan Chase, but I haven't gotten investment yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it, right? So we are writing check sizes for growing companies. This money is not for startups. It's not for growing. It's for people who want to scale. We're writing check sizes of 2 to 5 million. We're helping them to look at acquisitions. We're helping them to look at mergers, roll-ups, building out that management team, building board of directors, making sure they have expertise, all things that capital market is doing. We're now doing it with our minority businesses. And we're helping them to improve their financial acumen. We are not about financial literacy. We're about financial intelligence. That's what we focus on, is financial intelligence. So there's two sides of this track, and I've been talking a little bit about it. So when you take a founder or CEO from low wealth communities whose mother or father didn't have their own business, it takes some work. It takes some work, right? So you need that intermediary and connector to help them. And we're trying to change the landscape for minority businesses. This is the chart that I want to show you. So the growth trajectory of someone who has limited wealth versus someone who has prosperous wealth. So when I put this chart in front of someone who's prosperous, I say to them, how far on this scale can you take your kid up before they have to go out and find outside capital? Most of them tell me they can take them up to success. On the low wealth side, starting, there's no family and friends with resources, right? They can't get bank loans. They don't have any assets. So we have to be that. So here in Erie, somebody in this audience, in this city, it's got to be the group saying, I'm gonna figure out how we see investment into early stage companies. Because that foundation has to be built solid with infrastructure for them to be able to scale later. And you can't wait till they 12th graders to try to do that. You gotta do it when they start out, right? So we have segregated our money. We have a pot of money for construction. How did I get the money from construction? I went to the largest developer in the city of Philadelphia. And I said, I've been watching you grow. And I said, I noticed that you put out an RFP for a general contractor once you select your project. And I said, I noticed that you write in there in that RFP about minority participation. I don't see you in enforcing it. And I bet you your white GC firm is not meeting that minority participation. He agreed with me. So I said, I tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna set up a fund. It's gonna be called Grow Philadelphia. And you're gonna put in your next RFP that when that general contractor doesn't meet the minority participation, you're gonna take part of their retainage and you're going to direct it to Grow Philadelphia so that we can loan that money to the small construction firm to help them build their capacity and have working capital. And ladies and gentlemen, I think to date we probably have gotten almost $2 million from him, from that model. It's called Grow Philadelphia. So for construction minority firms, you need to bring the largest non-minority construction firm to the table and get them to mentor, I don't like that word, but to coach and to really help them. And that's what we've done, right? So we brought, I mean, his name is Jerry Sweeney. You don't believe me? Look it up. It's called Brandywine Realty Trust. It works. So he just had a ribbon cutting. I go to every ribbon cutting he has. And I said, well, Jerry, it's been a while since we got a check from you from your project. He said, he said to me, I'm gonna write a check soon. I'm gonna write a check soon, right? Because if you don't do that, they will forget about it, right? And you have to constantly be intentional about it. And that's what I do, right? And so what we're focused on now is being very strategic about this ladder, about this journey, right? And we sit down with entrepreneurs and map out these journeys. The next chart I'm going to show you to do that because capital markets is used to non-minorities and they are able to grow and get to size and scale quicker than minorities because they don't have the resource. But we always comparing them with one glove. And we think that one glove, everybody should fit that glove, but it doesn't. And no two businesses grow at the same rate, same speed, same way. And minorities, when they have limited resources, they don't grow the same as people who have resources. So I really need you to kind of understand that tonight because it's really important. And this next chart shows you how we're working with clients. So we map out with them two journeys. One is the capital journey, and one is the business journey. And we sat down with them. We just don't make them a loan. We just don't help them get a contract. We try to understand what's the final destination, how big you want to be, how many employees, because they don't all be the same. Some people say, well, I don't want to be big. I just want to generate enough revenue to take care of my family. That's okay. We will support you. And then others say, well, I want to be $100 million business. Then we try to figure out that journey. So we have two journeys. One is business and one is capital. And we lay out all the various forms of capital and we lay out the whole journey for business. And then we also talk about exit strategy and enterprise value, EBITDA, retained earnings, and all of those buzzwords that to help these clients. And so this is really the key because they don't know. And you have this PowerPoint. It's yours. You can use it. This is not proprietary. Anything that I said, you're welcome to call me. I will give you more details about it. We do have a document that says Grow Philadelphia. Willing to share it, right? anything, because this is not about the Enterprise Center. This is not about West Philadelphia. This is about America. This is about getting us back to where we used to be, right? Where we had love, respect, and we were helping each other. That's what this is about, right? So this is my dream come true, which is Innovate. It took me 5 years to get that license, cost $500,000, right? I convinced one of the largest law firms in Philadelphia to work with us to do this. And as I said earlier, the federal government has issued 310 of these licenses, which is a covenant license issued by the federal government. So I've been FBI background checked, I've been fingerprinted, I've been scrubbed, right, to get this license, right? And it's covenant. And the reason I was able to go to TD Bank and get this license because we have a federally regulated fund called a Small Business Investment Capital, right? It has been predominantly used in non-minority communities. And once I learned about it, I said, I'm bringing that to the low wealth community. And that's what I'm fundraising for, right? And I'm not stopping there. There's going to be a fund two, fund three, fund four, fund five, and I'm going all the way to California, right, with this fund. So a couple of new initiatives. This is also for Erie. We're having a national pitch competition. We raised $250,000. Anyone in Erie is willing to apply. They don't have to move to Philadelphia. And we're going to award this in the spring of 2024, right? This is on our website. Push this out to your community, okay? They got to have a plan. They need to do an investor's deck. We will help them with that investor's deck. I hired a person that will help them do investor deck, right? But push this out. This is not just for Philadelphia. We're pushing it everywhere I speak in the country. I'm pushing this out. This is my next initiative for 2024 called Cocktails and Economics. I told some of you about this. There is a budding industry of minority brand, both alcohol and non-alcohol beverages, right? And a lot of sports and celebrities have now pushing out their brand. I don't know if you know this, but LeBron James has a tequila. Michael Jordan has a tequila. James Harden. I think Patti LaBelle has a wine. There's breweries, everybody now, right? And so as you know, here in Pennsylvania, our liquor store is state controlled. But when you go in there, there's no indication of any diverse brands in America. So what I'm doing is getting all of these diverse brands, and I'm gonna take it to Josh Apparel. And I'm gonna say, you need to have the Pennsylvania Liquor Board have a shelf in state-controlled liquor stores that talks about diverse brands, right? And so the cocktail hour will feature that diverse brand. So I'm kicking it off in February of 2024. If anybody you want to come to Philadelphia and see, and guess who I got gonna kick it off? Patti LaBelle. Because she's from Philadelphia and she's got a wine, right? And I'm gonna get her to kick it off during Black History Month, and I'm going to 21 cities. And unfortunately, Erie wasn't on my list. I'm so sorry. Huh? Right. I'm going to 21 cities. Um, right? So this budget to go to 21 cities is $350,000. So I went to JP Morgan Chase and told them this idea. They wrote a check for $150,000, right? So I got $150,000 to go to kick this off in February. The economic side, I'm also building a list of economists because what I've learned is, again, you got to develop that eye for the economy, right? I study economics. I follow economic indicators because as a leader, I need to make informed financial decisions. And so what I've learned with, and this is a true story, a young lady got a contract for $2.3 million. She's in the concrete business. So she called me up and she was so excited she got a $2.3 million contract. I think she thought she was a millionaire. But I'm like, that's just a contract. You got to figure out your margin and all those things. And so she said, I need mobilization money until my first invoice. I said, well, how much you need? She said $1 million. I'm like, well, so 2.3, you need $1 million. I said, won't you come in? So she came in. We ended up making her a loan for $700,000, right? But when she came back For the first meeting after we made that loan, she was driving a brand new Mercedes. I was so mad, right? I was so mad. And that showed me she was not good with money, right? And I find that with a lot of entrepreneurs, they're not good with money. They need to develop that eye for the economy, right? And so if you're a federal contractor right now, as an example, with the with the information going on in Washington, I would not be doing anything because we don't know whether the government's going to shut down in 3 weeks or not, right? And oftentimes these entrepreneurs don't take all of those factors in consideration. So what I'm going to do in these 21 cities is go around America and push economic indicators with an economist, right? And so the cocktail hour is to get them there. Because if I rolled out, well, I'm going to 21 cities to talk about economics, no one would show up. That's why I added cocktails to get them there and then talk about economics, right? So that's the key. So I'm real excited about this project. And it's going to give me a chance to take the pulse of America in terms of growing business to find out what they need so that I could get ahead of them in fulfilling that need. Here's another success story. So she's an early stage company. She's a graduate of Drexel. She came to us because she was infatuated with avocado seeds. And she was studying avocado seeds and recognized that when Chipotle throws away those avocado seeds, they end up in a landfill and they don't disintegrate. They don't break down. It stays a seed. And so she decided to partner with Chipotle to get those avocado seeds, right? And what she's doing is studying avocado seeds. And one of the things that she discovered, I don't buy frozen food. And one of the reasons I don't buy frozen food is because if you look at the sodium content of frozen food, it's high, right? And because sodium is used as a preservative. Well, she has convinced us that avocado seed is one of the best ingredients for preservatives for food. And we liked her presentation. She has no revenue. She's coming up with a drink. We invested $250,000 in her so that she could focus on her research. And when she get through proof of concept, we're going to do follow-on capital. Because see, that's another thing you have to figure out. How much follow-on capital you have to bring to the table constantly to help that business get to the scale stage. You just can't make a one-off investment or one-off loan. You got to stay at the table. But you got to get them. So we're real excited about her possibilities, right? And we took ownership in this. We didn't put that $250,000 in and then take ownership because we think she's going to hit it big. We think so, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's time for me to sit down with my moderator, who's also been a great host for me today. She's taken me around, and I just want to thank you for your time. And I want to be a resource to Erie. I'm not moving to Erie, but through the virtual environment, through the internet, we can share resources. You know, Philadelphia is a big city. Erie is a small city. We ought to form a partnership, right? Okay, I know how to do this work, and I'm willing to share how I know how to do this work because I stand here understanding that this is my assignment in life. I truly been blessed. I told Mr. Lee sitting there on the front, I'm a free woman, right? I'm not beholden to anyone but to minority businesses. And the good news is that if you help minority businesses in Erie, they will return the investment. I'm a witness to that. They will return the investment, but you gotta help them. And they gotta know that your help isn't genuine. See, oftentimes cities sit down and they come up with a strategy. And if they're not at the table when you're coming up with the strategy, they don't feel like they're on the menu, right? So you gotta make them a part of the menu. Okay, they got to be part of the advisory, a part of the decision making. You don't go to them after you crafted your vision because it's not their vision. We do not do anything at the Enterprise Center without minority participation, without minorities being at the table. That is so important. Now, oftentimes they don't know what they want. They don't know how to do it, but having them at the table and their voice, they will also be a part of the equation. And that's the most important thing that I want to leave you with. So come on up, Raven. You're going to move over, and I'm going to now answer some questions. And I guess we'll take questions from the audience, right? Okay.
Yes? Okay. Well, Miss Della Clark, everybody, thank you. So I was thinking this whole time, have you ever thought about having a podcast?
We do have a podcast.
You do have a
Yeah, we have a
podcast.
whole studio. I'm in an old television station.
What's it
Remember, I
called?
was married to Dick Clark.
What's the podcast called?
The Grit.
The Greet?
Grit.
The Grit.
Grit.
The Grit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am going to listen to that later.
Well, it went down during COVID, and so we're just reviving it back now, right? So there's a young lady on my team named Elizabeth Butler. She is rejuvenating it. So yeah, we do. We have all because we're in an old television station, so we definitely have all the features for anything media.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, The Grit, Spotify, Apple,
Podcast.
all the stuff. Awesome. Well, I just want to say, first of all, thanks for coming to Erie. How has your experience been so far?
It's been good. It's not my first trip to Erie, but it's been a long time since I've been to Erie. Um, it's been exciting. I think the one takeaway that I noticed is that it is a pronounced line, red line, between the have and have nots. We need to figure out how we remove that line.
So you are a very impressive woman, and just meeting you today and like spending the afternoon with you, I'm just in awe of just your power and your drive. In Philadelphia Magazine dubbed you the Rainmaker, recently naming you one of the most influential Philadelphians for your work advocating for minority and women-owned businesses in the past 30 years. What does this designation mean to you, and what does it mean for diverse-led businesses in general?
It means more salespeople call on you, wanting business, right? Um, I actually don't like pomp and circumstance. I actually don't like it, right? I just like doing the work. I'm honored with the recognition, but what's most important for me is that I change lives, not me getting the recognition.
So I wanted to bring back to a quote that you had on your PowerPoint um, that I don't know if people got to really read it. So I just wanted to bring it back up again. You said, access to capital is the number one disruptor for small businesses. We need more minority CEOs who can provide living wages to minority employees to help grow their companies. And we need to bring them enough predictable income and resources to be able to accomplish this goal. That's how we can see poverty go down and wealth go up. So my question is, how do how do we well, first of all, Erie has a lot of minorities who are interested in business. I mean, that might just be like an anecdotal thing for me, but um, how do we get more minority CEO? Like, how do we get more minority CEOs? And furthermore, how do we get just bigger companies, who can afford to employ other minorities at a livable wage?
Well, you gotta grow them. You have to grow them. So the first thing you have to do is put together a procurement strategy. So you gotta go to Erie Insurance, gotta go to the county exec, you gotta go to Gannon University, you gotta go to everybody in this city and say, what goods and services are you willing to outsource? And you take that aggregate number by institution and you add it up. If it's 50 million, 100 million, and then you say, okay, what industry cluster does that represent? If it's construction, then I got to build an construction cluster, right? And then if it's food, you got to. So we look at it by cluster, industry cluster, size and scale of the contract, right? So a lot of people call you up and say, well, I want a list. Send me a list of electrical contracts. Send me a list of food people. We don't send a list. We say, what is the dollar value of the contract you have? And then we will vet the opportunity based on that dollar size and value, right? Because if you're a flower shop, a retail, and it's $100,000 contract, you may not be able to fulfill that because you don't have the working capital for $100,000 worth of flowers. But a larger firm could do that. So we always like to match up dollar value of the contract to size and scale of the business. So we're very intentional. But what we like to do is understand the procurement opportunities. When would that come up? Because you could meet with someone and that contract may not come up for janitorial for 2 years because they already have somebody under contract. So they give you a 2 year window to get somebody ready. Capital, infrastructure, and that's what we do. So in 2 years, that business can apply. So we have a business called TWB. Her name is Trina Benjamin, right? We are intentionally helping her grow her janitorial firm. All right? We are intentionally helping her get contracts, right? Because we see her as somebody who can hit it big. And she started out with nothing, a truck, a mop, a broom, and a spray bottle. And now we got a janitorial firm that started out at zero. She's got 700 employees now. She's doing $30 million in janitorial. Trina, we got the larger firm, Donna Ali, Team Clean, to give business to TWB, Trina, to help her grow. Because at 30 million, she could give some of her smaller contracts away. So we're trying to get Trina there. When you saw business acceleration, we're trying to get her there further faster, right? So you have to always be connecting the dots and being that as they said to me, rainmaker or deal maker, right?
Okay, so you might have heard about this. This was going around the internet, and we made news about this. But this is uh, I would say kind of a controversial article, but an article came out a couple years ago that named Erie as the worst city in America for African Americans. Like I said, it was kind of controversial about just like the uh, statistics that they had in there, the way that they collected the data and whatnot. But it still says something. It says that something needs to be changed here. And the city of Erie has, made moves in a couple different ways. They created Diverse Erie, our DE&I commission. But then we also have other organizations that are working towards creating a more equitable Erie. So, for example, like I said, we have Diverse Erie. We also have Infinite Erie, who is in charge of seeing through the playbook. Um, and then there's also Erie's Black Wall Street, that's focused on entrepreneurship for the Black community in Erie, um, and other organizations as well. But what I'm trying to say is, so we obviously don't have the Enterprise Center here, but we have a lot of different organizations that are doing that work. So my question is, how can these organizations work together to achieve these goals? And what's the next step? So these organizations exist. What would take us to the next level of really achieving equity in the Erie community?
Well, I'd have to get into deep on these programs, but many programs end up being programs, right? And what I mean by program is that they are coping of the problem they're trying to solve, right? We don't need minorities in training and training and training. They need opportunities. And the mistake is made is that we keep them in too much training program. We think that because you're poor, you're not bright. That is not true. You need resources to fulfill your aspiration, but we keep them all in training, right? Non-minorities don't have to go through training programs like minorities have to do. So I would say, I'm not trying to put down all the nonprofits in this city, but if they're all running programs and not providing access to capital and just doing low-level work, you're not going to produce any millionaires. Who's the minority CEOs in this room? Raise your hand. There's one. Are you generating more than 500,000 in revenue? Are you generating more than 1 million? How many minority CEOs in areas generating $1 million or more? None? None? There lies the problem. That won't happen intentionally unless you put together the sticks and lay it down strategically. It just won't happen, right? So that's what you really need to think about. And that might be where that article and that tagline came from, is because Erie has not been intentional in producing any wealth. They've been intentional in producing programs.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned that before in your presentation. Low wealth communities just get programs that don't have a lot of money. It's like,
They
How
get
to do your
training
taxes,
program.
maybe. Yeah.
Well, workforce development does not exist in prosperous communities. It only exists in low wealth communities, right?
But the higher wealth communities, they just get
They
funding.
get expertise.
Yeah, and expertise. So let's talk about capital. You've created a number of innovative finance mechanisms at the Enterprise Center, such as the Innovative Capital Growth Fund and the Due Diligence Revolving Advance Pool. What was critical to getting these funding mechanisms created?
Finding the expertise that would assist us, like law firms, accounting firms that would really help us, and we've been successful at that. We get all the professional service providers in the city to help us, law firms, accounting firms, right? Because you want to bring to the table expertise to these entrepreneurs. You don't want to bring technical assistance. Technical assistance is a word used in low wealth communities. It's not used in prosperous communities. We stopped using the word technical assistance.
The University of Georgia Selig Center for Economic Growth states that money circulates 1 time within the African American community, compared to more than 6 times in the Latino community, 9 times in the Asian community, and an unlimited amount of times within white communities. How can we leverage strategies in economic equity in ways that benefit small Black and brown businesses that in turn benefit their communities by keeping money within them? So, how do we keep money circulating in the Black community?
Well, if it's only a little bit of money, you can't keep it. So you need a lot more money in order to get better scale and have higher percentage.
Okay, so this goes back to the capital and the funding. Um, what should funders know or change? How should funders, if they want to get involved, if they want to, I don't know, say be maybe a good ally, how, what should funders do if they want to impact communities of color?
Well, the majority of funders that I have met all have a product or service that they need to sell, but they need a farm team to help grow their customers. So we're able to get banks. One of the reasons that banks have invested in our fund is because they want bankable clients. They want clients that come to them to understand EBITDA, retained earnings, enterprise value, and we get those clients ready for them, right? Banks are in the business of making loans. And the reason minorities don't get loans is because the balance sheet's out of whack. Assets are low, liabilities are high. If we strengthen that, the bank loves us. We're their farm team, right? Erie Insurance, your largest employer in this city, can't sell you liability insurance if you don't own nothing, right? If you don't have a business, they in the business of selling insurance. They need a farm team, right? They need somebody to help them produce their next generation of customers. That's how I go out and sell this, right? You need a farm team. You need people that the funders understand they want something out of it too. They want a return on investment, right? So we help our clients get in front of them through the opportunities that they help to provide. So insurance, loans, products, services, law firms, accounting firms. Eventually, clients can pay for those services.
What role do you think local government should play in creating equity for minority businesses?
What now?
Local government, what role should they play?
Next question.
Funding, maybe? um, all right, so I think we've got a couple more minutes, so let's get to some audience questions. Um, how, how do you get the employees adequately trained for the needed skills in, say, construction or finances or retailing?
How do I get my clients,
Your clients' employees, I think is what they're talking
the
about.
client employees? We don't do that.
You don't do the training for the employees?
No.
Yeah, so it's just for the
We only
the
work with the
business
CEO.
owners. Yeah.
We don't work with their employees.
Do you do any programs about, I don't know, employee management, like how to be a good boss, how to be a good CEO?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't do any of that.
What percentage of entrepreneurs who come into your organization don't complete the process, and what are the reasons? So the failures
Um,
and what that means.
I would say I would reword that question. We don't take every client that come in our door Because first of all, we can't help everyone that come in our door. We only want to help the ones that want to be intentional with us and want to grow and create jobs and be a good leader in the community. That's what we're about. We're about creating leadership. So we stop the failure at the door. If we see that you can't build capacity, you can't grow, you don't want to come to meetings, be on time, or you want to buy that Mercedes the first loan you get, you're out the door. We don't work with you. We don't mind saying no to small businesses that don't want to do right. There are some that just don't want to do right.
What part does DBE certified contracts, suppliers, and professional service workers play in the Philly economy?
They play a lot. They really do. I would say the professional service environment is really willing to help because they understand that's their farm team too. So if an attorney or law firm started to work with some of your early stage company, they started to grow, we get them contract, they want to take them on as clients.
Um, what is what can white allies do to make a more equitable community
I'm
for
sorry, what was the first one?
what can white allies do to make a more equitable community? Um, I guess in terms of business, what can white allies do to support minority businesses or
You said the White House?
white allies?
White allies.
Hmm.
They hold the resources. They got the money. They can invest in have nots. But you need that intermediary. You need someone. Which organization in the city do you trust to manage money, right? So that you could all put that pot together to help the small business. You got to have somebody you trust. One of the reasons I'm able to get money is because I've been fingerprinted. I've been FBI background checked, right? I got a good credit score. I have to be the role model that I want the clients to be. And so if somebody in this city you trust with the money, then you need to use that person to be the intermediary with the money. They may not, in fact, be the connector, but you got to have that money to somebody who trusts, right? Okay? Because it's your money. And so, I have developed that reputation where people provide the money to my organization because they know I'm going to deploy it.
Okay, so this will be the last question before we wrap up. What are some suggestions for creating community and support systems among small and or minority businesses?
Well, most of the time when I speak around America, very rarely do I go into a community where only one entrepreneur raised their hand. So, Erie, that is saying something tonight. That only one entrepreneur is in this room that is a minority raise their hand that they have their own business. You need to have more that raise their hand. I can't tell you what to do, but it signals a problem in this city, right? You do not have an equitable environment because if they saw that I was coming here and I'm a capitalist and I'm a capital revolutionary and I got access to capital, there should be more minorities sitting in this room. And so either you don't have them or you haven't grown them. You haven't laid the stick strategically to grow them. So I would suggest you figure out how you start to grow minority CEOs in this city that could be leaders, right? Not leaders of nonprofits, okay? Not leaders of nonprofits. You need leaders of for profits. So if I leave you with anything, create the environment in Erie where minorities flourish and thrive and create wealth. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Well, thank you, Della. This has been a very enlightening program. I've learned a lot about business today. I'm sure you all have learned about business too. And this is information that you can take back with you and help to grow our community to be a more equitable place. So I just want to thank Della, of course. Thank you for coming all the way to Erie, and I hope you had a good time in Erie. I'd like to thank the JES staff and the volunteers. This is how we get this show running every day. We have 14 programs this year, and our staff and our volunteers are doing an excellent job at just making everything run smoothly and making everything great. I'd also like to thank our board. They are wonderful. They're always there for support and for help. And I would also like to thank our sponsor for tonight,